welcome to Education Today. Today our topic is faith in public schools. So I'm here with middle school math teacher, Miss Saratella. So she's going to give us a little insider information on how she incorporates her faith into her classroom and kind of this topic as a whole. So tell us a little bit about your classroom.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. I've always watched your show. It's very exciting to be here and get to speak to the education community. I'm glad there's shows like this out here so that we can kind of reach out and all become better teachers. But my classroom, I have such a joy to teach 7th grade mathematics at a school in Azusa. I've been teaching for about 5 years now, so it's very exciting. Every day is new, every day is exciting, especially with math. There's so many things to teach the students, so many things for them to learn. So definitely just have fun with it every single day. Classes are kind of big, bigger than in the past, 35 to 40 students, so that definitely poses a challenge as a teacher to kind of meet all the students' needs, but the new curriculum, there's all these new ways to kind of teach the students, meet their needs, so it's very exciting.
Nice, very good. So doing a little research, most teachers don't use their faith in the classroom, and that's kind of a sad fact, but it's a fact. And so in my research preparing for getting to talk to you today, I found a quote from Bartlett that says that the dichotomy that has developed within the American evangelical community envisions the world as a 2-story structure where the second story is kind of the spiritual realm and the first story is more of the everyday physical realities. And so this dichotomy has led to Christians hiding the light of Christianity under the proverbial bushel of secularism.
Yes.
And so this is leading to the continued corruption and deprivation of the American culture from this light that Christians have to offer. And so so what are your thoughts? Do you think you should let your faith show in your classroom?
I mean, absolutely. I think that the people from the state are going to say no, keep your faith separate. They're going to say check it at the door, kind of don't bring it in the classroom, but would I really be believing in something if I left it outside of a portion of my life? And, I spend 4 or 5 days a week at work. I'm with these students. I really devote time into their lives. And so if I kind of turned off the faith part of me when I went in, I would be a totally different person.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't be representative of who I am. And I think that, I was reading C.S. Lewis, and he just says it the best. He says there's no neutral ground in the universe, and that everything in the universe is either claimed by God or claimed by Satan. And that's including my classroom. My classroom's not exempt from
Absolutely.
that. And so I feel like why not let the classroom be claimed by God? Because if you kind of give Satan an inch, he's going to take a mile. And we can't really afford that with the hearts of these young kids. So I feel like it's very important to bring your faith in your classroom any way you can, keeping in mind, though, what's appropriate, according to state guidelines and things like that.
There are still rules. Yes. Yeah. Very cool. So, but you're math. You're a math teacher. So I know a lot of times history, English, it's a little bit more straightforward on how you can kind of incorporate that. You can look at documents. There's historical events that include the church and stuff like that. So math, that's a challenge. How specifically in math do you kind of weasel your faith into the classroom?
Right. Well, I always tell my buddies in the English and history departments, you have it so easy. You could just have them read a historical document, and then there you go. They could become a Christian right on the spot. But I have a little bit more difficult time because numbers really don't tend to turn people towards Christ.
Yeah.
So, there's different ways. A lot of it's not related to content. A lot of it's just the way I carry myself as a teacher, treating the students with love and respect, kind of acting like Jesus would, kind of being their keeper in the classroom. A lot of it goes into class discussions, the way we act towards each other, the way I treat the students. A lot of it is in discipline, treating them with kindness, not destroying their dignity or attacking them, because that's really not what Jesus would have us do. And I think that, giving the students a little bit of light and showing them kind of who Jesus is, what he would want, that's kind of the best way to do it in a classroom. It's hard, though, to find math topics that connect. I always struggle with that. I have a few that I go to, but I've kind of been wanting to get more creative over the years.
Yeah, well, speaking of, we actually have a couple of viewers who sent us in sample lessons that they do in math classes specifically. Wow. And so one of them has to do more with infinity and kind of in a calculus classroom, where the other one is kind of a fun fractals lesson that you could do with sort of any age range, and it should be pretty reasonable for the students.
Great.
And so, yeah, they're very fun, and I think it's great for all of our viewers to get a chance to see their fellow teachers teaching in a classroom. Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look at those.
Great. So today I'm going to talk about a lesson that I usually use to kind of bring the topic of God into math. I'm a calculus teacher at a local school in Azusa. And so here we have a common topic in calculus, infinity. It's very exciting. It's also kind of foreign to many students, so I'm excited that I'm kind of one of the first times they've been exposed to this topic in a very formal way. Students at this point are very familiar with graphing and things like that, so putting a function up there such as y equals 1 over x, the students aren't going to be shocked when they see this function. They would know how to graph it, they would know how to display it, see it like this. One thing that students may not understand is kind of what's happening over here. We usually just stop drawing and we kind of indicate that the axis is just going to keep moving, but we kind of asking the students what really happens. This is where the topic of infinity comes in, and here's where we can kind of ask the students, what does it mean that we kind of stop drawing this line but we leave an arrow right there? Many of the students often answer that it means, it's going on forever. Well, then we can kind of probe them a little deeper. What does forever mean? And they go, it's going to get really big. Okay, the x value is going to get very big, but thinking more about that, does it approach something? And then, one student, very smart student who kind of likes to read ahead, he's going to go, oh, I know, it approaches infinity. So then to that student, you're going to kind of say, all right, thank you, it does approach infinity, but we kind of need to know what infinity means. And then this opens up into one of my favorite activities of the year. I draw a big infinity sign on the board for the students. And then we talk about what infinity means. Now, what infinity means in math, and then what infinity means to us. And so the students really like this. I let them discuss in their groups of 4, and then they kind of report back to the class. Each group will give me an answer for each side. So you give them about 5-10 minutes to kind of discuss this. They write ideas down, things like this. The students really enjoy this because it's not particularly math intensive, so they kind of enjoy this little break to talk about things and discuss with their friends. So in math, these are some of the common answers we get. We get that infinity means big, forever, no end, has to do with limits, it's increasing, or that you can't reach it. And these are very familiar. The students they're kind of knowing that they're going to be learning about limits at infinity, so that's where that comes from. Forever, big, no end, increasing, those kind of go along with the graph that we were looking at on the last page. So this makes sense why the students would say this. This is great. This is math, so this will help us lead into the lesson for tomorrow. But the best part right here is what infinity means to us. Now this is where we can throw the faith part of the discussion in here. So we ask the students on a personal level what it means for something to be infinite. A lot of students say unknown because they're very unfamiliar with what the concept of infinity looks like in the real life setting. They would say it's complex, something that's hard to understand. They would say that it's something out in space. They would think of, the space movies they see where black holes go on forever, things like that. A lot of students say it has to do with time. Maybe time is infinite, maybe they're unsure if time is infinite. One answer I get just about every year that I love hearing is when students say higher power. So infinity points to something that they're unaware of, and it points to something that's kind of outside themselves, that's non-human. Now this is something that you can even say infinity points to something beyond humans, and you haven't overstepped any boundaries of separation of church and state, but it's even better when a student brings this up, and then you take the opportunity to ask that student, what do they mean by higher power? What do they mean by expanding, going beyond? Things like that. So this is kind of when you start the discussion. It's a springboard, and you can ask each student to consider, what could be infinite, and that leads us to think about God. You do have to be careful not to say that God is infinite or anything like that because you have to be sensitive to all the beliefs in the classroom. But it's good to introduce this topic, and if the students feel that they want to talk about it, they will. It also opens the discussion for a later time when it's appropriate for students to approach you and ask personal questions. So hopefully this lesson on what infinity means to us will be beneficial to some of you new teachers, and hopefully that you'll find it something you could use in your classroom. Thank you.
Hi there. This is an example lesson that I use in my classroom. I'm a big fan of the show, and so I'm glad to be able to share some lessons with you guys. And so this is something we do in my geometry class, and we call it Fun Fractal Friday. And the students love it because it's a nice break for them. It's not super math intensive, like challenging, but it's interesting and fun, and it's a cool topic to be able to talk about. So to start the lesson, lesson, I just give them a couple of examples. And so this one is one of the most popular. And it simply starts with a straight line, and they just think that that's awesome that we can create something that looks like this by doing the same process over and over again to just a straight line. And so we kind of go through that. They get to watch how it's constructed, and they can follow along and construct it on their own paper also. And I get every year, they're always so amazed how quickly it goes from being this and this to looking something like this. And then drawing even the next step after this, it's like, it'll take you quite some time to break all of this up again. So it kind of gets their minds thinking and the creative juices flowing as to like what this idea of infinity, how it relates to fractals, like how that plays in. And so the other one we talk about is the triangle and all like the ways that we break that up. So this is where I have them actually do an activity. So I have a student sample. And so they get a piece of paper and they draw an equilateral triangle. And then, so it starts with just the triangle, and I give them the end lengths, which in this case I did 96. And so they start with that, and then we've constructed on the board so they have an example, and then they break it up. And so they can go as many steps as they want within the given amount of time. And so most people get to about this far broken up. And so once they get to where they have to stop with their drawing, they now have to use this original side length, and they have to solve for the side lengths of all of the triangles within. And so this kind of incorporates the math and geometry into it, but also they think it's super fun because it's something they created and they get to figure out how math can actually explain this cool thing that they drew. And so yeah, this, like I said, is a student sample, and the kids just love it. And so when we have extra time at the end, they get to color it, and even high schoolers still go crazy for coloring, so it's quite a good time. And so then after this, we talk about how something so simple, like I said, like a straight line or an equilateral triangle, how quickly it can turn into something so complex and so beautiful. And so we kind of talk about how this, like, what does this explain in the real world, and how, without me saying how does this relate to God, I ask them how does this relate to God. And so I go to this same website every year, and it has 30 beautiful photographs of fractals in nature. So same thing, we talk about, okay, you see that we just created that thing using math and using shapes, but these things also exist in real life and in nature, and how do you explain how something so complex and so mathematical shows up in something that we don't create. And so it gets the students talking every time without me having to say something to get myself in trouble. And so just kind of some of the examples. The pictures are beautiful also, and so the students love it. But yeah, we have broccoli. That's always a fun topic for students who don't like to eat their parents' broccoli. Snowflakes, another really cool one. Cabbage. There's all kinds of different ones. And so the students really like just looking at the cool pictures, and then I kind of give them a few minutes to just talk in their table groups about why they really think, like, why do they think that it's possible for these things to show up in nature. And so every year it gets a great response. The students really enjoy it. It's one of probably the days I have the students most engaged all year. And it's a really cool opportunity for me to get to see their minds thinking about beauty in nature and why that exists and how that relates to God. So that's it. I hope that helps. Well, that's all we have for today. Thanks again, Ms. Saratella, for being here. Tune in next week when we talk about how to handle those crazy students during testing season. This is Education Today, where students reign supreme. See you next week.
Rise when I gave the